Good afternoon guys and welcome back to the channel. So for a long time now, and when I say a long time I mean at least 2 years that this channel's been alive, I've never done a diesel. Every time I get a car with a diesel in it, I rip it out and put a petrol in. So I've been asked time and time again, Sam, do a diesel conversion. So over the next couple of episodes, we're gonna be doing exactly that.
Sam from Built Not Bought.
Alright guys, just before we get started with today's episode, my friends over at CTO Industries have just launched their website now. They've got a massive range of four-wheel drive equipment, ranging from Kings, Fox shocks, raceline wheels, 12-volt systems, recovery gear, winches, all sorts of stuff. Now they set me up with a bit of a code to kickstart the thing off. We've got BNB CTO. If you use that code at the checkout, it'll save yourself a few bucks. Definitely go and check it out. I'll put a link down below and pretty much grab some gear. It's COVID guys, so work on your four-wheel drive. It's massive. Time to get out there and explore this country. Get the rig set up. So jump down, click on the website and use that code BNB CTO. Enjoy the episode. All right, so what essentially we're going to be doing is, you may have seen on my Instagram ages ago, I was putting the word out trying to find a 1HD-FTE, which is one of Toyota's greatest engines. I'll tell you a bit about them a little bit later on, but the car we've got here is a 105, so it's 2000 model 105. It's got the 1FZ engine in it, so the petrol. And the idea, we're going to convert this and put the 1HD-FTE into it, because what Toyota really did is they had these 105s, they're solid axle, but they never had them with the diesels. All the diesels had that IFS front end, so they're a pretty common conversion, but there's a bit of fiddling around to do when it comes to mechanics as well as the electrical. So I'm going to pretty much walk you through my experience with doing this conversion and pretty much see how we go with it. So I guess first things first, we've got to rip this old engine out of here and then we pretty much look at what we've got to do to get this thing converted, ready for the diesel. What's connected? How many times have I done this? Indicators are still connected. Hey-o!
On the rust.
It's handy having no windscreen on this thing.
Yeah, I thought I'd just take it out for you, make life easy.
Right, so I've got most of the front off now. I've actually got James in here. So this is James's car. He's kindly let me film this conversion because, well, both of us don't know what we're doing. So combined, we might actually know what we're doing. We're gonna be winging this conversion, done a bit of research, but I don't know, if you have any good like forums or something that run through these conversions, drop it down in the comments below and it'll probably be too late by the time I read it, let's be honest. But anyway, it's a good thought. I'm thinking we chuck it on the hoist because then we can get underneath and undo, like start cracking the engine mounts. There's a big pan under there, like one of those big, what do they call, like bash guards. So we'll get that off. Might be able to get this cross member off or some people cut them and rejoin them depending on how high it's going to be to get out, because it'll be much easier to get that big motor back in here without all this in the way. So we'll see how we go with that. So one thing I recommend is whenever you're pulling something apart or doing a conversion, always put the bolts back in where you found it if you can. If you can't, use a little container and write on it where it came from, because tell you what, when you put a car back together and there's a million bolts, you don't know where they go, it's an absolute nightmare. Okay. So while I got you here, what's the plans with this? When we do the conversion, what are you going to be using it for?
Basically touring.
So this is your dream rig?
It's my dream rig. And you're the man making the dreams come true.
Well, that's it.
Well, I hope so anyway.
He got me because apparently I knew what I was doing, but I definitely don't. Like I say, when that motor gets dropped off, we'll probably get it in a week or so. James has just had it checked out by a mechanic doing all the valve clearances and stuff like that. But once it's here, I'll give you a bit of a history lesson about that FTE motor and why it's sort of so sought after. There we go. Ah! Hey-oh. It literally fell out. Boom!
Got him.
Keep tight. And now the rattle gun will work. Funny, right? So we're doing this conversion because you all want to see a diesel conversion, but the funny thing is I'm putting this motor in the 80 series, so still petrol at heart.
Can't take a man away.
Boy, that's the secret I just gave away. Petrol in the 80.
I don't know what you're talking about.
Don't know what I'm talking about. Alrighty, I'm just loosening all the bell housing bolts. I'm gonna take a couple of them out completely, but while I'm under here, it's so much easier to get to. Because then when we split, we're probably gonna split the engine from the gearbox, leave the gearbox in here, and just pull the engine out the front, so. Alrighty, so we pretty much pulled off what we could underneath. That exhaust won't come fully out until we get this manifold off. So next I'll pull the manifold off, get that out, and then the exhaust will pop out the top, crack those bell housing bolts. So I think I'll just run you through a bit of a time lapse now and then pretty much come back to you when we're ready to pull this thing out. Obviously got to cut this cross member as well. I think that's the best way. And then we can lift this thing out and it can come out with the engine stand because I don't have a full gantry crane to lift it up high enough. So at least it'll come out and we can slide it forward, get it out of here. All right, so I spent the last couple of days getting the hardest bolts out in my life. Any car, always the hardest ones to pull out are the top two on the bell housing. So I ended up having to pull the mounts out and lower the engine, get those bolts out, blah, blah, blah. Anyway, so the plan now, we had a bit of a discussion about this and we think the best way is just to trim this little section out. It makes it so much easier to convert. Bye! So much easier to convert and pull engines out, and then you can just put either a screw joint or re-weld it back in afterwards. So first things first, we'll cut that out, and then it's pretty much, I think there's one bolt holding the gearbox together. So we'll get we'll get the jack on, lift her up, crack the gearbox, and it should just come out.
Fingers
Unless
crossed.
you've forgotten to undo a couple of cables.
Wouldn't do such a thing.
All right,
game on.
Now we've got to split the gearbox.
You got one bolt on top.
Oh yeah, I'll pull that one bolt out. That'd be a good idea. Boom! I reckon under the bell housing, and then as we pull the engine forward, it'll land on that. You know what? I'm going to pull the bloody air out the tyres because that'll help get the engine out of here. It's a trick I learnt on my patrol. Now it's the height factor. So. Power steering.
That wasn't me.
It's a big banjo. Always something. Good spotting. Look at that.
How's that for a TA?
Never had an assistant before. It's great.
Well done to this assistant.
Look at that. Come on! There we go. All right, that sump's not going to clear, is it?
Not yet. Cool.
I've actually got shoes on today. It's amazing.
Yeah, you've upgraded me.
Oh, all right, come down slowly on the hoist. New engine for my motorbike. Nah. All right, that should be sweet. Let's get those back wheels up.
Perfect.
All right, so once we've got this engine out, what I like to do with an engine bay in any of these conversions is to make the most of while the motor's out. So I want to give it a good degrease, a good water blast, clean it out, strip back any wiring that I don't need. With these conversions in particular, the easiest way is to actually use the harness and the dash from the motor so they can talk to each other. You want to avoid things with CAN bus and all that kind of stuff, which I don't know if these have, do you know?
Wouldn't have a clue.
You said I needed it though, so I'm going to take your word on that. So I'm going to spend the next few days cleaning it all up, getting rid of probably, how old is this car? 2000?
2000.
So 20 years worth of people just fucking with it and adding cables and spotlights and all sorts of shit. Had the winch in there, had the spotties, so clean all that up and then we'll come back to you when it's all ready to go. And I'll pretty much run through what I'm going to do when it comes to the conversion with the wiring and all the different bits and pieces that we need. So, I'll see you then.
Game on.
Game on. So I lost my table. Don't ask me how I lose a whole table in this workshop, but somehow it happened. Or someone pinched it from me. Hang on a sec, I feel a bit too low. Hang on. Bloody, ugh. That's a bit better. Right, what are two things that can absolutely kill your engine? Water ingress in the fuel system, oil recirculation. That's detrimental to a diesel. It's called an EGR. People have the EGR blocks, etc. But a really awesome solution is to use a catch can. Now, a lot of catch cans vent to atmosphere, which are illegal, and other ones, they kind of just push it back into your engine. They don't necessarily filter out the oil that comes back. So what Ryco have done has put together a kit that can combat these two common issues in modern diesels. Now, they come vehicle specific, so they have all the bracketry ready to hook this straight into your engine base. You don't have to bug around fabricating stuff, etc. Now, as I mentioned earlier, one cool thing about these catch cans, it's not really a catch can, they call it a crankcase filter assembly, because it does exactly that. It actually filters the air going back into your engine. So you stay on the right side of the law, so you're not venting the atmosphere, but also the recirculation of the oil and the air going back into your air crankcase intake is gonna have no oil in it because of that filter. And what's really awesome about this kit, it comes with a full instruction manual, which I must say is pretty damn accurate. They've actually got 3D models of a lot of these engine bays, so you know exactly where they get installed. In the kit as well, you get a nice little, beautifully laid out assembly of where all the fittings, hoses, and all that stuff goes for the catch can, and then one for the fuel water separator, which we'll get onto next. Now, diesel engines, the injectors hate water. You get water in your fuel system, it's gonna destroy your engine. Now, a lot of fuel stations around the country, especially if you're going remote, can have that possibility of that contamination. So if you're putting a catch can in, you might as well chuck in one of these as well. So this will actually filter out the water from your fuel system. It's got a nice clear bowl at the bottom, so you can actually see if it starts filling up with water, and you can see what you have just saved from going through your motor. Am I getting a phone call? Hello, hang on a second. Oh, sorry about that. Where was I? Talking turbos, you know. They're very important for one of the projects coming up. So it really is an all-in-one kit when you want to put it in your vehicle. They do all modern four-wheel drive, so it will come with that catch can, it will come with that water to fuel separator, all in a kit with the bracketry to bolt straight in, so you can do it yourself. Cheap insurance to make sure your engine isn't going to suck that water in and that oil when you're doing this kind of stuff. I mean, an FTE motor that's going in that Cruiser ain't cheap. Now, thanks again, guys, for sticking around for this week's tech tip. And remember to support the businesses that support Built Not Bought. Now back to the episode. Oh ho ho! Well, here it is, the 1HD-FTE engine. Now, I promised to give you a little bit of a history lesson about this motor and why people go so crazy about them. Because I mean, for a long time, diesel engines have been the most obvious choice for touring this country in a four-wheel drive. They seem to be the most reliable and the most efficient way to travel this country. Now, Toyota first saw the diesel engine appear in the 80s with the 12HT. Now, this motor was found in the early 60 series and was a straight six mechanical injection turbo diesel.
Direct injection turbo? What a charge!
Now, even to this day, the 12HT is a sought-after engine due to its simplicity and history with Toyota. Now, when the 80 series appeared in the 90s, the 1HZ became the way of the future with its overhead cam technology, meaning that the engine was smoother and even more efficient. Now, these were naturally aspirated, so the 1HZ-T came out. This was the turbo option, but it began to develop some problems for itself. The bottom end bearing went at about 150,000 Ks, and these engines just seemed to be not as reliable as the previous versions. So by the time the 100 series was released in the early 2000s, it seemed that Toyota had combined all of its knowledge gained by the previous iterations of the turbo diesel engine and produced the 1HD-FTE. Now, it's an inline 6-cylinder overhead cam 24-valve turbo diesel with modern electronic injection. And even with all this, it had a bottom end which could handle the power. Now, even to this day, they say the 1HD-FTE is the most reliable, strongest diesel engine that Toyota ever released. So that is why we've chosen this motor for this next touring build. So since it's been a few days that the engine has been away getting all its valve clearances and stuff checked by James's mechanic, engine bay, not too much has been done. I've just done a bit more cleaning up. Still got to pull this exhaust out. Now the bell housing I've ripped off because that gets changed. So you got to, I'm pretty sure it's a 1HZ bell housing that we put on there. So that should be coming on Wednesday, so a couple of days. So pretty much cleaned out the wiring. We got the old harness out for the 1FZ, so that's all been pulled out. Now wiring, let's jump down because we've got a bunch of wiring that needs to go on this thing, and we'll take a look at what we're going to do there. All right, so wiring. People seem to hate wiring, I don't know why. So James has literally just dropped this off for us. I've got a bunch of manuals, so that'll help me get through this. Now, there's two ways I can do this. I'm gonna have a look at how we can do it. If I can get hold of pinouts and try and wire this thing myself. Otherwise, there are a couple of places that can do plug and play conversion harnesses. That might be the way to go with this to just avoid that headache, but we'll see what we can do initially. So what we've got, this is the old FZ harness that's on there. We've got a couple of the dashes, so I have pulled the old dash out of the Cruiser. Now, I've been told we can reuse this because the new one, they're actually flipped around, so the rev counter and the speedo is in opposite direction. But the rest of it, obviously need the whole body harness, engine harness. So the FTE engine harness is in here. The FTE ECU, is that it? Yeah, that's the FTE ECU. And then attached to that should be, hang on, where is it? Oh, Yo. Oi, James. Yeah, you don't have it. No. Yeah, but part of that, it should have been connected to that harness. If we don't have that, yeah, it's not there. Not gonna be fun. Is that everything out of the box?
Righto.
Yeah, without that, it's not gonna run. It's basically not a 1HD-FTE if we don't have that. All right, hold on. Yeah, I'm gonna have to try and find one, I reckon. There's one part of this engine that makes it the FTE that it is, and we didn't have that part. So it was a super expensive mistake. We're trying to track one down, so